Hello, and welcome back to this update of the SAS Agentic AI Accelerator version 1.9. In this update, we have a lot of things split between users of the accelerators and administrators. We will first take a look at what's new for users, and then at the end take a look at what has been improved if you're an administrator that provides SAS Agentic AI Accelerator. So let's get right into it. We are starting things off inside of SAS Visual Analytics. With the new deployment method that will be described at the end, we are introducing a way where the LLM prompt builder is now available through SAS Visual Analytics, through the data-driven content object there, and no longer requires an external web server to be provided. Let's go over the new features that this brings. First up is we can now more easily search through and filter by users what we have available in our projects. Let me go ahead and look for Accelerator update in here. The same is true for my prompt tests, and we can do things like new idea. Now also available is the capability to add optional documentation. If you have used SAS Model Manager and specifically its model card feature before, you will be very familiar with these fields. If you aren't, as always, there is a hover field provided that explains what sits behind these fields. Now, while this is up here, you can update this anytime independent of the model version itself. So you can improve this documentation as you go along and independently update it. Let me close this out. Next up here is also now the capability to delete a project and also to delete prompts. Now, if we delete a prompt and it's not being used inside of a decision, then we can just go ahead and delete it. But now let's take a look at another one. If it is used within a decision, then we will get a deep link into that specific decisioning asset where we can then review if this prompt can actually be deleted or if we should first talk to the decision builder if this artifact is still required. Of course, we can also do this on a whole project level, then you will be guided through each prompt individually. Nothing else has changed in this first section. Next up, you might have already noticed that suddenly all of these large language models are already selected for me. That is because now if you have a best prompt set on your project, on your prompt, and then it will get loaded into the UI from the last best prompt automatically. So you no longer have to reset up things. In addition, new artifacts and options have been introduced, like reasoning effort, that you can now make use of through this as well, as model providers have moved away from things like temperature or top P and moved more of these types of capabilities into what is being called reasoning effort. Again, the accelerator standardizes this across all model providers. Moving on from this section, we have a big new improvement in the building of your prompt section. First up, the old syntax has now been replaced with a new syntax, meaning we can now go ahead and add variables through this interface here. So let's just do test. We can provide a description here, example. Then we can decide if our variable is of type string or decimal, and then we provide the value here that is going to be injected into our prompt down below. Now, if you have an older version of a prompt, you do not need to update to this new specification. You can continue using it the way you are used to it. Only if you are then updating it will you be forced to add this new feature here. Now we can go ahead and in our text, no longer do you have to follow the variable name colon value semicolon next variable method that we had before. Now you can enter your variables at any place in your text by using the double curly braces or by right-clicking and then selecting from this context menu the variable, and it will get added to where you clicked. In addition, you now can also add these variables into your system prompt. It's no longer limited to just the user prompt in case you need this. Let us remove this variable. The run experiment works as before. Next up is a new feature, and it's actually two features. The first one is you can, and let's go to the smaller version of this, you can now do LLM as a judge. You just select what model should be the judge for your prompt experiment and select from there. Then you can also decide if a language model is allowed to judge its own answer. By default, this is deselected because of a literature-based finding of self-preferential bias that language models do have. So this is kind of intended here to mitigate that, but you can override the default behavior. And you can also activate auto-judging, meaning as soon as the prompt experiment has run, you will get a notification and then the judging will begin. Do note, judging of course adds cost and runtime to your prompt experiments. If one judge isn't enough, especially with complex prompts, you can also convene a council of judges. Now, it is recommended to use an odd number of judges, of course, to resolve any potential ties that can occur. But if you either don't have enough language models or you do want to use all of them and it just happens to be an even number, then you can also add a chairman model that can break up ties. Again, here, by default, the own responses are excluded from the judging process, but you can also add this here. Next up, in the prompt experiment tracker, you will now see on the right-hand side 3 additional icons that have been added. The first one is just the ability to load that experiment run, meaning the language models with their settings are selected, your system and user prompts are loaded, and then also if there is a specific LLM judging pattern noted on that prompt, then that will also be loaded automatically. You can also delete a prompt experiment from this. Of course, you have to still click save in order to manifest that inside of SAS Model Manager. And then finally, if you do not want to auto-judge things, you can also judge this run by clicking this button here. Now let's go into the actual example when we run a prompt. First up, we see the system prompt, user prompt, and the variables with their values up top, like we did before, just now with the added variables section. Then, if you did apply a judging process, you will get a result view in here, where we can see what each model ranked, and then we can also see the reasoning for that ranking that they provide. And then finally, we can take a look at the actual outputs here, and we can see what their judging rank was. If there is a clear judging winner, we will also get an additional icon in here. So looking at this here we do have a best response in this third run, and then our model got this additional trophy icon, meaning it got judged to be the best. Finally, we can go ahead and manifest our prompt, and this now also provides the capability to include the LLM call into your prompt that you can integrate into SAS Intelligent Decisioning or any place else. If you use this, that means you no longer need to make use of the call LLM node in Intelligent Decisioning. You can also then decide which of the default outputs you want to be added to the output. So you can say, oh, I don't care about the runtime, or you don't care about the prompt length or the output length. You can all adjust that here. And then also, if you have your language model respond with a JSON structure, you can now go in here, specify what that value is. It will then get pulled into a named a variable with the same name. You can again say string and decimal as the output, and you can also provide a default value if it cannot be destructured from the results. If parsing fails, then you will also get this parse status that is either 1 if it succeeded or 0 if it didn't succeed. Again, this is only manifested for the best prompt and can serve to reduce the number of nodes you have in your decisions. Meaning previously we had to always have at least 2, the actual prompt model and then the call LLM node. And then if you were to use JSON output, you had to write your own code or use rule sets in order to destructure them into variables again. You can now do all 3 within one node through this new capability. Let me go ahead and switch to one other prompt here. And that is the last big feature that I want to talk and highlight. First up, I didn't talk about this. First up here, you can see I have 10 prompt experiments in there, pretty simple ones. But the more interesting piece comes after the manifestation section in our UI here. The idea here is to leverage an open source project called DSPy. This has to be specifically enabled by your administrator because it requires additional installation steps on your environment. But DSPy is a process that utilizes a pipeline and programmatic approach in order to improve prompts. In order for it to do that, you need to provide at least 10 best responses, or you provide a CAS table that has at least 10 successful runs. There is a structure that is required for this that is explained when we select it in here, so you know how to do that. The next thing is you always need to select a language model that you want the optimization to happen for. Finally, you can then also go in and compare metrics and the optimizer. If you don't know how to combine these, there's a useful guide that is available on the open source project itself that you can make use of in order to better understand the combinations. If you use this feature, you will get these optimization runs. The optimization runs try to be as mindful as possible of the resources that they consume. They also provide a cost estimation, as does everything now, out of the box. And if there is no possible way to optimize this prompt, like here, the accuracy was already at 1 out of 1. So it then shortcuts the optimization process in order to not burn tokens unnecessarily. So really a good new capability that has been introduced. And as you can see here, you can also manage these older runs. You can delete them. You can load them as an experiment, so you can easily integrate and then build off of them. And also all the content behind this is getting saved and versioned into SAS Model Manager as well. Speaking of, let us go back to our Accelerator update and the new idea example and open that up in SAS Model Manager. This is the final feature that I want to highlight for this release. And that is now the capability with model cards being unlocked. Note that this feature specifically requires you to have SAS via 2026.07 or later, which at the time of the release of this video is the newest stable release of SAS via. If you have that version available, you can then see these ready for validation properties on the model card. If you use the optional documentation fields up top, you will find the purpose and all of these pieces documented into here as well. You will also find additional tags. Now out of the box, the language model being used for the best prompt is added as a text on the model, plus a note is put if it includes an LLM call and output parsing. And then finally, your administrator can also enable a custom chart that gets added out of the box into your model cards that can highlight how prompting is being done on your environment, how language models are being used on your environment, and all of the other pieces. Now, at this point, I have finished the user section and we will switch over to the administrative section. So if you're not interested in that content, please turn off and feel free to move on with your day. Okay, going over the new features of the accelerators for administrators. That new integration I showed off for SAS Visual Analytics is done through SAS via integrations. And then in here you find the SAS Agentic AI Accelerator prompt builder.json, which is a transfer package that you can import using the SAS environment manager. And that will then enable you to set up everything inside of Visual Analytics. And then you open up that report that it imports, and it will guide you through the rest of the setup process. In addition, if you want to make use of the added report that was added to the model card, this can be found in the logging and monitoring stack, where there is an LLM usage report JSON that you can again import as a transfer package and then also set up the logging as described in this section here. If you've previously set up the logging and monitoring, you don't really have to do anything. It's still the same report if you did that before. The second big update is on how you set up the whole project. So if you are new to this project, then congratulations, you have a lot less work to do now. If you already have a deployment, the first thing is there is no longer a dependency on the SAS portal framework for SAS via, which required this external web server as well. So if you were only using that project for the LLM prompt builder, you can now decommission that web server and slim down on resources. And then the second piece is the whole lifecycle of language model is now administrated through the model definition builder. For the model definition builder, you will find an install piece that I want to go through here with you together. For this, I just pulled a new version of the Agentic AI Accelerator, and I'm just going to be pasting the commands for me here as well. So the first step is to go into the model definition builder CLI folder, where the command line interface is being kept and updated and evolved over time. The next piece is to create a virtual environment from Python where we can make sure that we only have the packages available that this specific utility that I'm providing actually need. Next step is to install the packages that the CLI requires. This can take a moment. The dependencies are all listed there. So if you are relying on something like an internal artifactory, please do extend the command to point it towards your artifactory, and also grab the latest package requirements so that you can ensure that everything is available on your specific artifactory. I'll give this a second to finish out. All right. The setup finished, and now we can use mdb-help to get an overview of its capabilities. Now, the model definition builder is a pretty comprehensive piece. The important pieces are, for example, to use the add to add a new model to your environment. And the good thing here is then that MDB add will guide us through the setup process. We have massively expanded the supported provider capabilities here, and it comes with out-of-the-box templates for most of them right away. If you make use of that, please let us know if you have any feedback on that. Then if you are making use of pieces like the publishing towards your endpoints, this can generate the YAML files as well for you. You can retire models that you no longer require to be available for your end users. And there is also a setup piece. If you're a first time user of this project, then you can use the MDB setup help to be guided through all the setup steps, and that also helps you to create all the required files, collects the information, and makes the setup as smooth as never before. I hope these updates, both to the user side and the administrative side, really unlock a lot more value for you with the SAS Agentic AI Accelerator. Let me know your feedback and see you next time. Bye bye.